Hey guys, welcome back to Young Americans Abroad, your best place for weekly content on young American soccer players playing overseas. My name's Austin Van Churn,
And my name is Patrick Ferry.
and welcome to our show. Well, guys, we have an action-packed show for you today, including a duel between two young Americans over in Germany.
And also another fine performance from one of our favorite U.S. forwards in the Eredivisie.
And finally, we will finish with our hot takes on the USMNT roster that was just released this past week. And I guarantee you guys, you don't want to miss it. All that and more in this episode. Well, guys, the first player we want to talk about today is Christian Pulisic. And Christian Pulisic actually started and played 90 minutes in Dortmund's 3-2 win over Hertha this weekend. And this was a really big game for Dortmund. They were able to pull out the win. It was a very tough game all day. And Christian also, got the start after his big impact sub performance last week where he had a goal and an assist. So, Pat, that was, really good to see from him this week that he was on the field, to start the game.
Yeah, that's awesome. Exactly what you brought up. It's great to see Pulisic after that kind of hard work and with Sancho, really performing well throughout the season. To see him, get a full start, especially during this crucial time of the season where I think they're level with Bayern. I know they have the goal difference advantage there, so they're ahead Bayern, but tied in points. It's an exciting finish to the Bundesliga season finally, and Christian's becoming a good part of this towards the end of the season. Especially getting this start, like I mentioned, and also with these U.S. friendlies coming up, it'll be a good time to kind of recalibrate with the national team. We've seen some players like Bobby Wood and other players have up and down times at clubs, perform really well at camp and some friendlies and stuff with the national team, and then go back and all cylinders firing to an exciting title finish, hopefully.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, this is the time of the season where, heroes can be made or lost, I guess. And right now, Christian Pulisic is probably not a Dortmund hero. So, in this performance, he didn't play great, I would say. It was kind of a shaky performance from him. He missed a really, wide open chance in the box kind of earlier on in the game, which was, a chance he really should have finished. And
a player at his caliber, right?
Yeah, it's a chance that we've seen him finish on the national team, multiple times. It's something that we've even seen him finish for Dortmund, but just on the day, it wasn't his strongest game. I would definitely say that, but like I said, Dortmund were able to get the win, and he played all 90 minutes. So, Lucien Favre seemed to trust him on the pitch over some of the players he had on the bench, and we'll see what happens, after this international break. Like you said, Pat, we're just really excited to see him, back in a USMNT camp, especially with some players like Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams. And also if Greg Berhalter is going to play him in that number 10 position, I know me and you are kind of excited to see, what he can do in that position again.
Really excited, Austin. And I know because I think the last few times there's been some injuries that's kept him out of some of the camps with the U.S. So, yeah, it's just great to see. Seems like he's pretty healthy right now.
Yeah.
Don't want to jinx him. Sorry, guys. But, yeah, hopefully we'll be able to see that kind of trio and more with these friendlies. And, again, some more some more performances where he really steps up his game at the end of the Dortmund season here.
Right. Yeah, and that substitute performance last week where he had a goal and an assist was, it was a good performance from him. It was a fantastic performance. And then, this week he didn't really make nearly as big of an influence on the game, but it's still just good to see him getting more game time. It's something that's kind of been scarce over the last few months for him, which is concerning. But he already has that move sealed to Chelsea next summer, so I think right now, he's kind of just biding his time, doing whatever the team asks him to do. And, it's a weird position to be in. But
it is, yeah. And he just seems, like from his interviews and the time that we've followed him, seems like a very, grew up really fast over in Europe. Seems like very professional, mindset and attitude. We don't see him kind of on social media or anything, complaining about the time, things like that. He just seems like he's putting his head down, working hard, like you said, that substitute appearance back where he had that goal or assist is great. And yeah, hopefully, I'm sure with, like you said, with Chelsea on his mind and all these changes to the US, it's an interesting point in his career.
Yeah, very true. So we'll be excited to see, the next week or two what he can do with the US, and we'll monitor that and let you guys know. But now we want to go over to Holland, Pat, and talk about another player who's really come on recently and is playing really well.
That's right, Austin. And that's none other than Andrija Novakovich, one of our fan favorites here. So right. He actually, over the this past weekend, in a 3-1 win against MN, if I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, he had a goal and an assist. So we'll dive right into the assist first. I believe that was in like the 17th minute. It was hard to tell off of the highlight that I was able to catch, but it looked like it was either a goal kick or one of the defenders kind of booed the ball way upfield. And obviously Andrija's pretty tall there. Used the size to his advantage. Kind of headed the ball into the path of, I think it was Lissandro Semedo, and he kind of put the ball in the back of the net. I think it was like a near post finish. So great to see Andrija involved there. And then later, I think it was around the 46th or 47th minute. Right in stoppage time there before the half, Andrija was in the box, kind of waiting right by the 6, but saw the outside. I think it was one of the midfielders make a nice cut and was darting closer into the goal, ready to cross it. Andrija smartly looked around, almost backpedaled a little bit, and it was nobody marked him at all. Backpedaled, the ball came right to him. He was almost in a just kind of like standstill position.
Right.
Austin, he just powerfully headed it right over the goalie. So great to see him. We've seen some nice flashy finishes with his feet, but he did it all with the aerial duels in this game.
Yeah, that's true. And that's that size like you were talking about that really helps him, win a lot of those balls in the air.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because that's a huge asset, and then we can see him play, skillfully, with his feet, going one-on-one with defenders. So Andrija again I think it's his 7th Eredivisie goal this season. And Fortuna, I think, is sitting in 12th or 13th, comfortable away from the relegation spot. So not so bad for a team that just got promoted. And I think he's getting a lot of rave reviews throughout Holland.
Yeah, and he looks very comfortable, kind of like I've alluded to, I think, in our last episode. When he scores now, he's like very passionate with the fans, and like he feels very like you can just tell he's not nervous. Like it's not a situation where he's like in and out of the team. He's starting every week there at Sittard, and he's performing well. So he's kind of become one of the key players for their team, and I feel like he's thriving in that role this year, which is cool.
Completely agree. That's awesome thing to bring up too, because especially the life of a loanee, it's tough when you switch from team to team there. But yeah, he just seems very embraced with his teammates when he's celebrating and with the fans as well. So all great signs for Andrija, and I think there's about 6 or 7 games left in the Eredivisie, so he still has time to put a few more goals in the net, the back of the net there, and some assists. So I'd really like to see him, and I don't want to dive too much into it. We can talk about it later with our hot takes for the US, but I would really like to see him in a US uniform soon.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, or at least again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so yeah, that's really all I wanted to bring up on Andrija there. He's performing very well in Holland. Hopes he keeps it up for the finish of the season here, Austin.
Yeah, that's very true. And so now I guess we'll move over or back to Germany and talk about 2 players who played against each other this weekend in the Bundesliga, and that would be Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams. So Weston McKennie in this game, it was the first game for Schalke under their new manager. I believe Hub Stevens is his name. Obviously, after Domenico Tedesco got fired this past week, after that 7-0 rout.
Brutal Champions League game, Austin. I don't even know why I tuned in for that one.
What was the aggregate? It was like 10-2, I think.
I think it was 10-2.
Oh, my goodness. So, yeah, bad last week for Schalke. But, in this game, Schalke only lost 1-0. But they played pretty well under their new manager. The thing I wanted to bring up with Weston in this game is that he actually played 90 minutes as a right back in this game. And, he looked okay in his spot. He did get exposed pretty much midweek against Man City a few times. I know, Pat, you're you were saying you watched that game and it wasn't good from him.
Yeah. It wasn't the best performance. Leroy Sané was kind of having, the entire Man City team was just having their way. So again, I'd say as a collective whole, there was nothing. The defenders are just under constant pressure. So
right. Well, the good thing was, at least in this game, he wasn't under that same type of pressure, and he did, I think played a pretty good game as a right back. He tried to get involved in the offense, like we've seen him do in his other positions that he's played for Schalke this year, kind of in that 8 or that even 10 role for them this season. And he did try to tuck inside a few times during the game, and also got up the wing and really tried to get involved in the attack. And I thought he did a pretty good job. On the day, like I said, Schalke didn't play horrible. They still were unable to score and kind of lacked that final third play, or that good play in the final third. And I really just think that they're wasting kind of Weston McKennie's talent playing him at right back, because I think he played better as a right back than some of their midfielders played this weekend. Kind of like Benjamin Stambouli, in my opinion, didn't play too well in this game. Sebastian Rudy, I think, was the first sub off for them and didn't really influence the game that much. So I really hope we can see, maybe Daniel Caligiuri come back and play that right back role for Schalke, and they move Weston up into the midfield again. I hope that can happen, relatively soon.
Right. And Austin, just points to bring up, like, especially with this crucial time of the season here, where, they want any, part of that playoff, the relegation playoff area.
Absolutely not.
We would want to see McKennie, really utilized in that midfield role. I think that's definitely would be best for Schalke as a team.
Yeah, I definitely think so. There was a sequence of play, I think it was late in the second half, where he kind of bombed down the wing. And I can't remember if it was a headed ball into the box or if it was a pass, but he literally created one of their better chances on the day and almost got his, 7th assist for Schalke this year, and his team leading 7th assist. So I just don't understand why you're going to take your player who's literally your leader in assists and stick him on the right wing, or in that right wing back role, right back role. Why not use him as kind of that midfielder that the team, revolves around, in my opinion, and move someone else to that right back spot. I just think they're kind of wasting his talent.
Yeah, it'll be interesting what kind of goes on the next few games. So.
Yeah, I didn't really look up before filming. Something I really should have looked up, but I think Daniel Caligiuri is injured right now, and I think that's kind of why they're playing Weston as a right back, just because he's done that a few times this year. And none of the other midfielders that they have or other outside backs that they have seem to be able to play right back, or they don't really trust them at the moment. Right. So, and obviously, Weston's a very crucial player to have on the pitch, and maybe they trust their midfielders a little bit more than they trust their backup outside backs. So they want to keep Weston on the field, but keep also their midfielders on the field. Maybe that's a situation, but I really hope this isn't a permanent thing. Pat, like you said, with a new manager, it's a different situation now. We don't really know what's expected of Weston, or we don't know what the manager's expectations of his lineup and his team going forward will be. So let's just hope that we don't see him after the international break playing that right back position again.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
So
that's all we can hope for, because he, again, like you said, just immensely talented, athletic player.
Yeah, he has it all. And he even showed that in this game. He defended pretty well. He also, used a lot of skill. I think he had 2 overhead flicks in the game to kind of get out of pressure, and then also did a really good job coming upfield, carrying the ball and taking some players on, getting out of tight situations. So a player like that, who's that talented, it's really exciting, to have him, play for us in the future. I can't wait to see what he can do.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And speaking of another player who's insanely talented and can kind of do it all, that would be Tyler Adams. So obviously he played in this game as well, played all 90 minutes for Leipzig, and looked really good. Obviously he was a midfielder in this game. He played in that number 6 role for Leipzig, which is that defensive mid spot. He had some really good tackles in the game. Also played some really insightful balls. I think there was one pass he played I think it was in the early part of the second half where he split, I think it was 2 or 3 defenders, and it was a perfectly weighted ball to kind of get into that spot, right before the final third. I forget what player it was. It might have been Marcel Sabitzer, who then passed it to, I think it was Timo Werner, for a shot. And it was a really nice pass to what could have been an assist if, Werner finished the chance. But it was another good performance from Tyler. He didn't there was a few times where he did lose the ball, and there was a few I would say, fouls, I guess, that he conceded. There was one like right outside the box, which was a pretty good opportunity for Schalke to score. But overall in the day, it was a good performance from him, and Leipzig get another win with him in the game. So that's always good, and a clean sheet.
That's perfect. It's a perfect win right there. But in terms of Adams, Austin, it's just exciting because we've talked again about his type of play and what he can do on the field. But I know we were talking off camera, and you were mentioning it is fascinating when you brought that point up about he's able to cover so much ground or be in certain spots,
right,
mindset, but also just that quick dynamic, that just athleticism, I guess, in general.
Yeah, he's so agile, and I think in this game you really saw it. Like he literally could step in and stop a pass from happening, I guess I would say. Like he would just cover and open like a player that was open in Schalke's midfield where someone was looking to pass to before the pass actually came off. So then the player had to wait, gather himself again and try to find another pass. And then he was already, trying to go cover that pass. It was just really impressive to, watch his anticipation and also, that agility that he has to kind of just snuff out any opportunities that Schalke had to kind of get in behind Leipzig on the day. It was crazy watching him move compared to the other players in Leipzig's midfield. It was just he looks like so much quicker to any ball that was played or any pass that was potentially gonna be played. It was really cool to see. Like it was,
and funny point. Just
it was exciting.
It's almost like in FIFA. We give a shout out to one of our friends, Dario, who puts his players up, the stats up. With speed,
the cheater.
Like that. Yes. So it's almost like Tyler Adams is playing like that in the field, which is kind of neat to see.
Yeah, we don't want to hate on Dario too much, but it's kind of like a cheat code, kind of like you said. So. The announcer actually during the game, and it was during I think one of these sequences where he was kind of bossing the midfield, was saying that a lot of people compare him to N'Golo Kante, and the announcer was agreeing with that point just because he has a lot of the same qualities that N'Golo Kante have. They're both very quick, agile, kind of shorter center mids who can also pick out a good pass and defend really well. So. If someone who's not American, because the announcer wasn't American, who was saying that, can see that and make that comparison as well, then I feel pretty comfortable about our future.
Going forward, I would not mind N'Golo Kante 2.0. So
yeah, very true. So that's all for this part of our segment, or this part of our episode and this segment. But now let's go over to some of our hot takes on the USMNT roster. All right, guys, so the USMNT roster was just announced this past week, and there was a lot of names that, Pat, we were excited to see. There was also some names we weren't excited to see on this roster.
Yeah, a lot of, positives and negatives, especially with once now we're getting more acclimated to Berhalter and, his system here and some of the players he's trying. So it's going to be exciting to talk about.
Yeah, and we polled you guys on Twitter to see if you wanted to hear us talk about the USMNT roster and give our takes on it. Just because in the past we've kind of done it, but some people didn't really. We didn't have as much responses to the like the roster videos that we have on some of our other videos. So we thought maybe you guys wouldn't want to hear about it, but since we got such a good positive review or whatever, positive response from the tweet, we're gonna go into it, and we got, like I said, Pat, we got some hot takes on some of these players that were called up.
Right. And you don't want to miss a single thing.
That's right. So I guess let's start with the goalkeepers. So first we have Ethan Horvath, Sean Johnson, and then Zach Steffen was called up, but now it'll be Jesse Gonzalez because Zach Steffen's pulled out with an injury. So Pat, I guess based on, this new list of 3 goalkeepers, who do you see as kind of the player to watch in this camp, and who do you think is going to get the starts now that Zach Steffen's gone?
Yeah, glad you asked me that question, Austin, because on the show, I've been a pretty solid Ethan Horvath fan. He's had some blunders and whatnot, but some also really solid performances. I think in the U.S. against Italy, he looked fantastic. So I think this is a great opportunity. It's an unfortunate injury to Zach Steffen. I'd love to see him in the camp, but I think it's Ethan Horvath was that clear number 2 role, and he's been playing week in, week out, for Bruges this season. And this could be a really great opportunity for him to, put in some impressive performances, as we are playing, a little more higher caliber of teams in these 2 friendlies. So maybe he'll get some good opportunities to save some good shots and whatnot. And again, Austin, I want to get your take too, but I think this is Ethan Horvath's time to shine here.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, you have to give kind of the nod to Ethan at this point. Obviously, Sean Johnson has started the season off pretty good for NYCFC. And, Jesse Gonzalez has kind of done the same thing there at FC Dallas. But, Ethan's kind of in the prime of the season right now for Bruges. Like Pat said, he's been the consistent starter all year after winning that job back. So, I think Ethan's got to get the nod. I think he's, the best goalie out of the 3 that were called in. And, I'm in agreement with you, Pat.
I would love to see, with these 2 games, which he'll most likely start, I want to see just solid consistency, excuse me, and just being able to distribute out of the back effectively. So I think those are really key takeaways for him.
Yeah, and I am happy to see, Jesse Gonzalez being the 3rd player called in after injury, I guess the 4th player called in after injury. But, obviously there are some other options that could have been called in, like Brad Guzan or Bill Hamid. I feel like there's maybe another option that we're not even thinking of that could have been called in. But, giving Jesse this opportunity, I think is really good for him. He did file that one-time switch now probably about, a year and a half ago, Pat? Maybe 2 years ago?
Yeah, around that time, so.
And hasn't really gotten much run in our team, let alone, called up that much. I think he's only gotten called up like 1 or 2 times. So,
and it was for that playing time reason, with just picking over the U.S. and Mexico, just seeing more opportunity.
Right. Yeah. And who knows, maybe Mexico would have given him more opportunity over the past, like I said, year and a half, 2 years. But this is a good time for him now to show kind of Greg Berhalter what he could do in this camp. And he's just got to take advantage of the opportunity. But I'm glad we get to see him because he's looked good to start the season in MLS. So I'm excited about him. He's still very young. So.
Yeah, exactly. Excited against. Yeah, I think our goalies have always been pretty consistent. We've been on the same page in terms of and as well as all the U.S. fans that we have a solid group of goalies that have been called up consistently.
Yeah. So now I guess let's move over to defenders. And goalkeeper wasn't a very tumultuous list, or a list that kind of split the fan base, I would say. But maybe the defender list didn't even split the fan base. I think it was pretty unanimous what some people's responses were to it. But Pat, you want to run through the defenders real quick for us?
That's right, Austin. So I'll run through all 8 of the defenders here that were called up for the friendlies. So we're going to start with John Brooks, Omar Gonzalez, Nick Lima, Aaron Long. Then we also have Daniel Lovitz, Matt Miazga, Tim Ream, and DeAndre Yedlin there. So those are our defenders, Austin. And I want to get your hot takes here. Where you would like to begin?
Yeah, so I guess we'll start with the positives on this defenders list. So there's, I think, 3 or maybe 4 defenders abroad that we're really happy to see on this list. Obviously John Brooks is really playing great this season for Wolfsburg, and has really just stepped up his game for them. Wolfsburg are vying for a Europa League spot now in the Bundesliga. So it's really, good to see him called into this camp. Matt Miazga, Pat, we've talked about, and you've talked about more than me in this show, that he's playing pretty well for Reading now, that he's at a place, where he can actually play week to week. And,
instead of that nightmare.
Right. Very, very true. So it's good to see him on this roster. I think he's got to be a key center back for us going forward in the future, whether he's in good form at the club level or not. Right now we're kind of strapped for good, ball playing center backs, which Matt Miazga is. So I think, he's got to be kind of a crucial player going forward with us. So it's good to see him. And then, two other players who play in England would be DeAndre Yedlin, who, there's a lot of talk now with that Nick Lima role that people call it, where the right back kind of gets inverted into the midfield and, kind of goes forward when we have the ball.
Right. And that's not really completely Yedlin's game, well, at least that we've seen.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely not, I would say. So it'll be interesting to see, what Greg does with him. I think he's a key player that we've got to include in our team somewhere. And it'll be interesting to see if Greg agrees with us. I don't know if he does.
A week in, week out, Premier League defender. I think that's
right.
Pretty solid. This is the best league in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't understand how we can, just single him out. Like, obviously that hasn't happened yet, but very well could happen. And then finally, the other defender that I wanted to mention real quick was Tim Ream. I think if we do play that defensive, what do you want to call it, like role or the defensive play style where, that right back does move up and we kind of shift the left back into a back three, I think Tim Ream could be the perfect, left back, center back in that scheme. So I was excited to see him called up, where I feel like some other people may have not as been excited, but I think he could really thrive in that spot. So
completely agree. And just to highlight kind of your recap there, I thought it would be great to see Miazga and Brooks, that pairing there. I think that'd be really neat because they could play to each other's strengths. They have different, types of skill sets, as well as just being both strong in the air, but which, most center backs should be. Right. But I think that'll be really exciting to see against, this higher level of competition here.
Yeah, and it may not be Miazga they pair with Brooks in this camp. It might be Aaron Long, who's played really well recently.
That's a good point.
Of the year in MLS, and I think him and Matt Miazga are not very similar players, but they're in very similar stages of their career. Although one defender of the year in their league, and Matt Miazga has been kind of reserved to the bench over in France. But I think they're players who have very similar builds. I think they're players who have very good confidence in themselves and their abilities. And I think they're both players that if you put on the field, I think you're going to, get a good performance from them, or at least a performance where, like I said, they're kind of confident. They're, I trust both of them, maybe Miazga more than I should, but so that was, I guess, some of the positives. We're happy to see Nick Lima as well, if we do go with that same scheme, because he did play very well in January camp and has started off the MLS season pretty well.
Yeah, and also, again, I want to bring up Nick Lima quick too. I just think it was well deserved, and I do respect Greg for kind of bringing him back in, because he did play that role very well from that small sample size of the friendlies that we saw in the previous camp. I'd respect that too. So I know you have a really exciting hot take that you want to get off your chest here.
Yeah, so obviously, I don't want to beat around the bush, but, Omar Gonzalez was called into this camp. Obviously, there's been a lot of people on Twitter who've, shared their opinions. I've been one of them. But, I guess to go into it, Omar Gonzalez, why are we calling in Omar Gonzalez at this stage in his career? Pat, I think we talked about this off camera. Greg said that, or I guess his response or his defense of why he called in Omar Gonzalez is that he provides a veteran presence who's been with the national team before to kind of give, that feeling of what it is like to play for the U.S. men's national team, give that presence in camp to the younger players. But, Pat, we've seen on this roster, and I guess we'll get to some of the other players who've, been in a USMNT shirt for a long time and who have, experience in World Cups, experience in camps prior to obviously this camp. Some players would be like, Michael Bradley's on this roster. John Brooks has been to a World Cup, is on this roster, and has, played a good part in our team over the past few years. You have other players. Tim Ream's been there a decent amount.
He was there in Trinidad, unfortunately. So
yeah. That's true. So what is the reason? Why is Omar Gonzalez one of the players we're trying to bring in to kind of show, show the younger players what it's like to play for the men's national team? It just makes no sense to me.
Yeah,
this isn't a player who really has ever done well in a USMNT shirt, in my opinion. Obviously, when he was younger, there was more, interest with him and more, he was a very interesting young prospect when he was coming up through the Galaxy system. And, when he was called up, pre-Bruce and in the Jurgen era, excuse me, there was some hype about him because he has such a good frame. We did think that his decision making would improve when he was younger, but unfortunately, it seems like that has not happened. But Pat, I don't know. Take over here. Give me your opinion on it.
Yeah, I wish I wish I had a definite answer for you, Austin. I'm really not sure. Besides like you mentioned, I know Greg wanted to bring in some veteran presence, but as to why Omar Gonzalez, I'm really not sure. Just because I know we've talked about it off camera. We had Matt Beasler and some other great players that could fill into that role, I guess, of being that mentor and whatnot. But especially with I know we have this Gold Cup coming up, and we know Omar, I think in the past, maybe it was under Jurgen, that he had a very strong performance in the final, I think, that they won. I can't remember which Gold Cup it was, but he had a strong tournament. But also just in general, with the World Cup cycles coming up, he's going to be well past that age of I think a strong national team performer, especially a center back. So I really don't understand it. Again, his team that he's on right now is not really playing well. I guess he's playing week in and week out, but it's not saying much if your team's this past week got destroyed by Santos Laguna. So
right, he got worked. What was it, 2 weekends ago? He got really destroyed.
So I see again. He is his strength is unbelievable. Some of the aerial duels, but again, like you mentioned, the decision making and I don't want to be harsh, but if I'm a young player or a player maybe that's been around for maybe the last few camps and whatnot, I would take veteran advice or leadership and stuff. But would you take advice from someone that was part of a crucial failure, or someone that's kind of been in and out and has had some struggles? I don't know how much of his veteran leadership it would help, to be honest.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you just said. I don't understand how, if you're a young player, or some of these center backs who have even been in camps before, how they really look at him as a player to look up to. Like Aaron Long, why would Aaron Long look up to Omar Gonzalez? He's been in multiple camps now. He's MLS Defender of the Year. I think Omar Gonzalez might have been MLS Defender of the Year at one point, but like Aaron Long's doing really good in his career right now. He's, one of our better center backs in the pool. Obviously he doesn't have as much experience as Omar, but he's gaining more and more. Every camp he's getting called up. He's playing a lot better than Omar Gonzalez right now. I don't see why, having someone like Omar in there to tell him about what it was like in 2012 in the Gold Cup is really going to help someone like that, mature and progress in the USMNT setup. I think you can get that from someone like even John Brooks, who was at the 2014 World Cup. Like why not, like you said, call it Matt Beasler. Matt Beasler was a starter at the 2014 World Cup, is playing for one of the best teams in MLS right now at Sporting Kansas City. Is still, I think, 31, maybe 32 right now. And Omar Gonzalez is, in his 30s, 30 or 31. So why can't we bring up someone like Matt Beasler, who's had, I would say, just as much experience, if not more, than Omar Gonzalez, and has had some good success with the USMNT, leading us to a World Cup and through a cycle. I just don't understand it.
I think Omar a lot Gonzalez of our
playing bad right now.
I think a lot of our fans as well. I was looking on Twitter and just in general, a lot of people I think don't really understand. So it's interesting.
We know what he is too. We know he's a center back who's got a good frame. Can head the ball pretty well on set pieces, but just cannot. He's so bad at reacting to what's in front of him. He's so late to react all the time. He's a player that is not proactive. He's always waiting for, the ball to come to him, or a striker to, kind of body him up and then try to win the ball from them. So why are we going to try to, bring in that type of defender to see what he can do. We already know what he can do. You know what I mean? We've had Omar Gonzalez in the Jurgen era, and then Jurgen found him not good enough. We had him in the Bruce Arena era, and he had the horrible wonder own goal
oh yeah, that was
in
bad.
Trinidad, which was what we all thought was going to be the last time we ever see him in a red, white, and blue shirt. But yeah, it's so bad in my opinion. The one thing that may be an excuse for Greg Berhalter, but he didn't say it, and I'd rather him just be honest with us instead of saying, it's about veteran leadership. Omar Gonzalez, I think, was one of the players on that Galaxy team when he was a player, and then also when he was an assistant coach for the Galaxy. So maybe there's some, he knows Omar, maybe he feels sorry for what happened to him in Trinidad and thinks that maybe there's a better player that he can kind of unearth inside of him and kind of, maybe get a player that was more similar to the type of player he was when, Greg was coaching the Galaxy, when the Galaxy were actually pretty decent, back in the earlier MLS days. But, why not just say that? Why not just say, I know Omar, I've seen what type of defender he can be in the past. And I just want to get another look at him, see maybe, I can do something that some of his other coaches haven't been able to do for him. But yeah, here we're talking about leadership, about someone who's, in my opinion, not a very great leader. So has the characteristics of a good leader. So
definitely good point to bring up. And that was definitely the negative here, but. So hopefully some of these other young center backs will really step up, and we won't have to discuss him too much.
Yeah, but, and there's one final, I guess, center back that I think you wanted to bring up, maybe that Cameron Carter-Vickers is a center back that is getting consistent time over in the championship. So it's kind of unfortunate to see him not get called up in this camp. We hear that he might get called up for the U23 camp. So if that happens, and Pat, maybe we're not as upset. I know you were a little upset when you saw this roster.
Yeah, just because I know I've been following him a little bit, and especially for the show here, it would have been great to see him included on the roster. I don't see him yet at that caliber of even maybe that Brooks level.
Right.
I certainly would like to see him with the senior team. But again, I think the U23s, as long as he gets in with some of those other players, and we'll mention more players that were left off the roster. But it seems like that kind of those younger players on the fringes will most likely be with the U23s. So we'll just have to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, that's true. So now let's go over to midfielders. And just to run through them real quick, we have Tyler Adams, Michael Bradley, Sebastian Lletget, Weston McKennie, Christian Pulisic, Christian Roldan, and finally Will Trapp. So Pat, after looking at that list, I know the first positive we're really excited about is obviously a healthy Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, and Christian Pulisic in camp. So we'll finally get to see them hopefully on the field at the same time in this camp. I
think that's what we've all been dreaming of. All of our U.S. fans have been dreaming of, just to see them.
Right. And we have gotten to see it, I think, once or twice before, but now it'll be with Greg Berhalter. We finally have a coach. We have, a growing philosophy of how we want to play. And hopefully, Greg said that we'll see Christian Pulisic in a number 10 role in some capacity in this camp. So hopefully we'll get to see, in my opinion, kind of those two 10s be Weston McKennie and Christian Pulisic. And then I hope we go with Tyler Adams as kind of that 6, which is the position Michael Bradley played. And I believe the first game in January. And I think maybe Will Trapp played in the second game in that position. It seems like those games are so far away now.
I know, right? But that's a good point. I don't want to cut you off here, but that's a good point to bring up. Maybe do we see I know we've been talking about it, Adams maybe in that right back kind of attacking spot, or do we see maybe with Bradley being on the roster and Trapp one game where Bradley starts and then the other where Adams starts in that position, maybe as a possibility?
Right. I mean, we could definitely see that. I really hope we see him play in the 6 role. Tyler Adams, that would be. But, yeah, if we're really hell-bent on putting Michael Bradley on the field, then I guess it would make sense to put, Tyler Adams in that right back position. Although, we've seen Weston McKennie play right back. But I don't want to see that. So I'm not on board with that. But my biggest thing with getting Michael Bradley on the field is I just don't understand why we want to take, like I said in our last segment, I think Tyler Adams is the best player at the moment in the USMNT pool. I think he just has every quality you're looking for in a good player who's, rising up the ranks over in Europe. He's a player that's playing very well right now in really good form. So why are you trying to put him out of position just to put in someone who's, playing in MLS for a team that's not doing so hot? He scored, I think it was 2 goals in the first game for Toronto FC, but he hasn't looked great to start the year. I know in preseason they got whooped pretty bad in a few games, and in the CONCACAF Champions League they got demolished in the first round. So
yeah, that was bad.
I would just rather see us maybe even try DeAndre Yedlin. Again, another Premier League player. Try him on the field. Hopefully, in a position at right back where we can use his speed or use just the abilities that he has to thrive, and kind of put Tyler Adams in his natural position, that number 6 position.
Yeah, I can completely agree with you, Austin, just because, again, like all the points we brought up in the earlier segment, his ability to read the game, be in the right positions at the same time, and just kind of how that would work. And it seems like these trio in the Bundesliga have built, different teams, but built solid relationships. And it'd be great to see kind of their chemistry working and getting training sessions together and see how that all kind of flows.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw chemistry this weekend with Weston and Tyler on the pitch at the same time. After the game, they shared a chat, and I think they exchanged jerseys as well. So definitely cool to see, that they're doing good things over in Germany. But I guess just to move on from that, so Sebastian Lletget, we're both happy to see called back. We thought he had a good, performance over in January camp. He was kind of that another one of those subs that came on in both games, I believe, and played really well. And we've know his quality from the last cycle. We thought he was one of the bright up-and-coming players on the USMNT.
Exactly. That unfortunate injury, Austin, which you mentioned again. Oh, that was tough.
Yeah, it was tough to see. But, Pat, I think there's one player that we didn't see get called up that we both really think should have got called up in this camp. We're unsure of, kind of why that is.
Yeah, and that is, for all you viewers, Dwayne Holmes, with Derby County. He's been, again, a big, player for them, especially for this, promotion to the Premier League, in that, I think, playoff spot there. And Dwayne has, had some, performances where he's been on the bench here and there subbing in, but mostly a consistent starter. Has been a huge piece of this team moving forward, especially the second half of the season. So I know a big point for this roster and for the team going forward was focusing on playing time, right? Just kind of getting players, even in MLS or any other, certain top leagues that were, consistently playing and, not just kind of sitting the bench or playing the last 5 or 10 minutes. And Dwayne is certainly, fits that criteria of playing week in and week out. So I thought that was an interesting omission there, Austin. How did you kind of feel, with Dwayne being off?
Yeah, I thought it was odd. Some of the other players we can justify why they're not in this roster, like CCV, Tim Weah and Josh Sargent, kind of like you alluded to, haven't really been playing as much for their teams recently. So, it kind of makes sense why we'll throw them with the U23 since they're age eligible. But with Dwayne Holmes, he's not age eligible for that U23 camp. And he's been playing regularly for Derby County and playing very well. So why isn't this someone we're looking at before, the Gold Cup, especially coming up this summer? This will be the last time we'll get to kind of try out a few new players. Like, why not call up Dwayne Holmes?
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's fascinating. Don't want to dive too much into the other names. I know it seems like Roldan and Trapp, obviously Trapp we know has had a good connection with him and right throughout his both of their careers, I guess, managerial and player. But I don't see much even Roldan or Trapp adding as much flair or excitement. I know they play in certain different midfielder roles, but why not kind of shift Dwayne in there? And he's an exciting, dynamic, attacking midfielder, Austin. And we've seen, week in and week out, him having some great goals and assists for Derby County. And he would just add some really, very nice flair, I think, to the team.
Yeah, and he plays that similar role, like you said, Pat, for Derby. He plays that center attacking mid position.
Yeah, so yeah, that I guess to be honest, Austin, that was my biggest disappointment. Just to not see Dwayne here. Again, I think another player we've talked about on the show, Romain Gall. I kind of understand his omission, but Dwayne's a player that I was definitely curious about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Romain Gall is just starting his season over in Sweden, so kind of makes sense. It's also interesting because Greg, I think, coached Romain when he was with Columbus, so maybe there's something that he knows or is not comfortable or not confident in Romain in bringing him in because he already kind of knows about the player and maybe just doesn't think he's up to that quality.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
I don't want to read too much into that omission, but yeah, like we said, Dwayne Holmes was the one player in this camp that we would have really liked to see, and we really think we could make a strong case for why he deserved to get called up. But like everyone else, it's not us, making decisions at U.S. Soccer. It's Greg.
That's right. And yeah, Austin, I know we want to shift over to the forwards here, right?
That's right.
So, yeah, they called in 6, and it will start off with Paul Arriola, Corey Baird, Jonathan Lewis, Jordan Morris, Christian Ramirez, and as well as Giassi Zardes. So, Austin, out of that interesting list we have, I think there's some surprises, I guess, and some also players that maybe have a lot to prove, I guess, going into this camp to us viewers.
Yeah, so I guess the player we're really excited to see here, maybe not really excited, but we're happy to see here is Paul Arriola. He's started off the MLS season pretty well, and he's a player that both me and Pat, I think, agree on. We really just like his tenacity. We think he's got some good technical ability as well, and is kind of a player that really embodies what it is to, play for the crest, play for the USMNT. So I guess, Pat, that was the player we were excited to see. Some of the question marks, I guess we'll start with Jonathan Lewis. And I think a lot of people have gone back and forth on Twitter with this one, but basically this is a player who, performed well in the January camp, and that was great to see. We're really happy about that. But it was also against some B teams, which was, Costa Rica was one of them. That's it is what it is. These teams are, Chile and Venezuela, that's a little bit higher of competition. They should be the A teams for both of those countries. So, we were unsure of maybe if, I personally think that Jonathan Lewis would be better served with the U23 team since he's age eligible. He's a player right now that's only a substitute for NYCFC. He hasn't really been starting any games for them. I just think maybe getting on the field for that U23 team would be a better experience for him. And I'm not sure if he'll be up to this level. I just want to say it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's fair that you bring that up. And if he's not even, a starter with NYCFC there, that's a little concerning. But again, still a young player who has a great opportunity. We would like to see with the U23s. I think you do bring up a good point there. And I could see, I guess, from one view of Greg Berhalter wanting to reward him, for exactly what he did in camp. Came there to, I guess, set some objectives and, completed those goals on the field and then, in the training ground there. So again, I am with you. I don't really see him being, I guess
it's good to reward loyalty or whatever, reward, doing what you're told and executing a game plan. But at the same time, you don't want to, kind of live or die by the players who, do that if you don't think they're up to the quality of these opponents. Maybe Greg really does think that Jonathan Lewis can be, a part of this first team roster whenever we get it, I guess, for the Gold Cup. Maybe that's the thought. But.
And hey, Austin, I'd love to be wrong here in this situation.
Yeah, that's true. I would love to be wrong. So, hey, maybe we'll find out more about Jonathan this camp. Maybe he comes in and looks really good and, scores again and becomes that one player that is kind of, maybe the Bobby Wood of Jurgen Klinsmann's era or I guess even Jordan Morris in Jurgen Klinsmann's era.
Yeah, that's right.
Two players that kind of Jurgen threw out there with not much confidence from us, the fans, and all of a sudden, they have, had pretty good careers ever since then. So
that's right. And speaking of Jordan Morris, Austin, that's a player I'm just kind of interested to see. I know he was called in earlier. Him and was it Josie Altidore, I think, to pass camp.
I believe.
Just to kind of, I guess, introduce themselves to the team and take part, I guess, off the field, behind the scenes things. But just to, I guess, get familiar with the new staff. So, Jordan Morris is back here, and we've seen him starting off the season strong with the Sounders. And yeah, I guess want to get your take and how you think. Are you curious or questioning the call up there, or was that kind of expected, or what is your take?
Yeah, I was at first. I did question it. But then when I really looked at our pool, and obviously Bobby Wood is injured right now, so that's another striker that you got to take off the list. Josie Altidore is just coming back from injury. As much as it pains me to say it, he's still probably an option for us. So it makes this decision by Greg a little bit more reasonable. I would like to have maybe seen him have a little bit more time with the Sounders, and hopefully he doesn't get injured this camp. Like, that's the one thing that I really hope doesn't come out of this call up is, a stressed workload for him that, results in an injury somewhere here down the line. But yeah, I mean, like you said, he started the season good in MLS, and hey, we could always use a striker to kind of step up and become the man for us. So yeah, not too disappointed in it, and I'm kind of excited about Jordan Morris, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Yeah, more excitement and just kind of curiosity how he comes back into the fold here, and does he I guess fire on all cylinders again, and come off blazing and make an impact. That'd be, I'm sure we're all exciting. Really looking for a striker, like you said, to step up and be that guy going forward.
Now to, I guess, kind of finish our forwards part of this segment, Jesse Zardes is obviously a player that Greg Berhalter's kind of remade over at Columbus and has really gotten the best out of. Now, last January camp, I don't believe he scored a goal in either game. Like I said, it feels like they're so long ago. Don't even remember.
Yeah.
But I know, Pat, you were saying off camera, you think this might be a big camp for Jesse to either, prove himself or kind of show that maybe he's not going to be Greg's man for the USMNT.
Yeah, I think, exactly what you brought up. The first two friendlies here under the Berhalter era, immediately was kind of in there in the starting lineup, and he had some really good he had a few solid chances that he should have finished, to be honest, and he didn't do that. He worked effortlessly, excuse me. But you could see that's he puts in the work. He's hustling all over the field, but if it comes down to execution in that spot, and we didn't really see that from him. So with these last two games, if we see the same kind of, I guess, performances and not maybe capitalizing on some, assists or goals or being a huge focal point there, I wouldn't be surprised, Austin, if we don't really see him maybe even completely with the Gold Cup roster, or at least not starting. That might be going too far right now, but
we look for other options, maybe.
Yeah, look for other options, because again, that's a position where you need to see some, I guess, tangible results.
Yeah, and he doesn't have too many excuses, I would say, in this camp to not score. He's going to have probably the best service out of our entire pool playing underneath him if we think the players that are going to start will start. And he's in pretty good form for Columbus right now. He started off the season scoring a few goals in a few games, so you can't say he's in bad form coming into the camp. So it's kind of now or never to prove that he is a player for the USMNT. Going forward, he's up to that level of quality.
Let's see him step up.
Yeah, let's see if that can happen. But yeah, that's all from our USMNT segment. Now let's head over to Quick Kicks.
All right, guys, it's about that time of the show. We're going into my favorite segment, none other than Quick Kicks.
So you could test Dwayne Miller. It's Altidore over the wall, and that one is in! Josie Altidore from a long way out. The opening goal for the United States.
All right, guys. So to start off Quick Kicks, we're going to head over to Scotland, where Tim Weah for Celtic got off the bench in the 78th minute in a 1-0 win against Dundee.
And moving over to Sweden, Nebiyou Perry made a loan move with an option to buy from Köln over to Swedish second division side Trelleborg FF over the weekend. So that's exciting for Nebiyou.
That's awesome, Austin. And heading over to the championship, it's Antonee Robinson in his second game back from injury, started the full 90 in a 5-2 win against Bolton.
Nice. And Timothy Tillman made his very first Bundesliga start over the weekend, playing 59 minutes for Nuremberg in their unfortunate 1-0 loss to Frankfurt.
And also heading back to the championship, Matt Miazga for Reading played the full 90 in a 0-0 draw against Stoke City.
And Jack Imperato scored a goal in Villarreal Juvenil B's 0-0 draw over the weekend. Actually, I think it was a 1-1 draw because it can't be a 0-0 draw. But, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's good. And then also Cameron Carter-Vickers played 90 in an unfortunate 3-0 loss to West Brom.
And Charlie Kelman played the final 14 minutes for Southend United and their 1-0 loss this weekend to AFC Wimbledon.
An exciting La Masia product, American Konrad de la Fuente played the full 90 in a 3-0 win for Barca's U19s against Hertha Berlin's U19s.
And as always, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure you like this video and subscribe down below.
And also make sure to check out all of our social media, our Instagram and Twitter. We have a lot of content going on as usual. And also with our US roster reaction, we'd love to hear from you, the fans and the viewers. Maybe players that you wanted to see called up, or players you're really excited to see for these friendlies, as well as players that you're not so excited to see. So the good and the bad, Austin.
That's right. And also leave a comment down below, saying the same thing. Reach out to us. Let us know what you guys think. And, yeah, Pat, I think there's only one thing left to be said.
I think you know what that is, Austin.
That's right. That would be one day we will win the World Cup.